I was born in 1950 and grew up on a ranch in northwest Kansas. My family raised Hereford beef cows and beef bulls, and they also raised wheat as a cash crop. We milked several cows and sold the cream. And of course, we had all the other things farms have: chickens, dogs, and cats. I was 13 before I heard how much Jesus had done for me. A good friend of mine asked me if I wanted to go to a Billy Graham crusade in Denver. I thought it would be fun to stay in a motel and eat out. But it didn't work out for me to go, so I decided to watch it on TV to see if I could find my friends in the audience. And as a 13-year-old kid, it seemed possible, despite how many people attended the crusades. I don't remember much of what Billy Graham said, but towards the end, I saw him point and heard him say that you can know for sure that you will go to heaven. Up until then, I thought the only thing I could do was live a good life and do the best I could. And if the good outweighed the bad, then I'd get to go to heaven. So I really started listening. Then he pointed at the camera, and I felt like he was talking directly to me. He said, "Even you at home watching on TV can make a decision tonight to follow Jesus and know for sure." Billy shared how everyone had sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And I didn't find that too hard to believe. I knew that I had sinned even as a young guy. That night, after Billy was done talking, I went out and walked around under the starry skies of Kansas and told God that I accepted the gift of eternal life. I believed he had died and shed his blood for me. I remember going to bed that night and waking up the next morning, jumping out of bed and thinking I would have a halo around my head or a glowing face or something. But I didn't. I looked just the same. But I wrote to Billy Graham to tell him I accepted Christ, and he started sending me Bible study material. The next fall, when I went back to school, I heard the Billy Graham crusade was going to be shown on film at my school. I thought this was my chance to go forward like everyone on TV. I had this idea you had to do that to seal the deal. So I went to the very first showing in our school auditorium. The seats were set up all the way to the wall. So I chose a seat right next to the aisle so I could go forward. But then a couple of my friends came and asked me to scoot over. Then a couple more came, and before I knew it, I was all the way up against the wall. When the movie came to an end, Billy Graham asked people to come forward. I looked at this whole row of friends, thinking, I don't think you have to go forward to be saved. That sounded too much like a work. So I got salvation as a gift figured out real quick. But then I started thinking, now I'm ashamed, and that's not good. So I got up and walked over all those knees and heard them whispering. But when I went back, there was a guy there that met me. He asked me if I wanted to hear the gospel. I said, nope, I already got saved, but wanted to come forward to seal the deal. He got me involved in a Bible study with a bunch of guys. Later, I started having some questions. As a kid, I had believed in Santa Claus and remembered thinking, what if Jesus is just another made-up person? And later in life, I'll find out he's not real too. I drove a tractor in the field, and often this is where I prayed. I would talk to God and ask him to help me believe. I wanted God to show me that he was real. I asked God for two things. The first thing I asked for was to raise a grand champion steer in 4-H, and the second was to be a Kansas State wrestling champion. When it came time to pick out our 4-H projects, my dad took me down to the feedlot, and there were about 250 cows. But this little steer ran across me, and I said, "Daddy, I want that one." And he said, "Steve, it's too small. It won't show well." I thought to myself, they all look the same. My dad said, "You need to pick another one anyway." I said, "Okay, but I want that calf. What other calf do you think I should pick?" So he picked one too. I raised those two calves, and the one my dad picked got a blue ribbon, but the one I picked became a grand champion. And it's not because I knew anything about cattle, but the Lord made it happen. I was pretty excited. I knew God was hearing my prayers, but I knew the next request of Him was big, maybe too big. In the Midwest, everyone wrestles, and if you couldn't wrestle, you played basketball. So my freshman year, the guy I had to beat was a state champion. I never even made the team. As a sophomore, I had to beat the runner-up. I lost to him. But at Christmas time, you get a second chance to make the team. I worked out every day, stayed in good shape, and at the second round of tryouts, I did a weird move and accidentally pinned the guy. The coach couldn't believe it, so he made me wrestle him again. But the same thing happened, and I pinned the starter. So I got to be on the team, but the team wasn't very good, and I was the weakest member. Fast forward to my senior year, and after a couple years of struggling, I was now winning matches and winning tournaments. I remember getting to the state finals and thinking how God had prepared the path for me. I won the Kansas State title and knew it was God that made it possible. From that time on, I never questioned God's existence or that Jesus had saved me. I knew He heard my prayers. I went on to college at Kansas State, and I met my wife Franny at a Campus Crusade event. Together we had 8 children, 16 counting spouses, and as of now we have 25 grandchildren and counting. The same God I trusted with my childhood dreams was steadfast throughout my life. In 1984, I felt led to plant a church in Maryland. I moved my family across the country with 5 small children, 1 month's rent, and no job. God faithfully provided a home and a community for us. I worked in construction and never made much money, but God always provided for my growing family. There were many decisions, circumstances, and trials that I saw the Lord be sovereign over. God has given me a very full life. I've had many blessings,